Welcome back. In this lecture, we'll learn functions. A function or a method in Python is a piece of code which gets executed when it is called. Parameters or arguments can be passed to a function, and we'll cover the following topics: how to create a function, how to call a function, pass parameters or arguments, how to use keyword arguments, arbitrary arguments, and arbitrary keyword arguments, how to use default parameters, how to pass different data types as arguments, and how to return values using the return keyword, how to use the pass statement and its usage, and how to return boolean values, that is true or false. Now let's see the demo. Go to our IDE and practice new Python file, and let's name it functions demo, and let's add the comment functions demo. Now let's see how to create a function. Let's add the comment create a function by using def keyword. So def, let's name the function function1 and print I am in function1. So this is how we can create a function by using the def keyword. So now let's see how to call a function. This is how we create a function. Now let's call the function that we created. Let's add the comment, and to call the function, simply take the function name, and this is how we call the function function1. So now Control S to save the file and right click and run functions demo. So now we can see whenever we call the function1, so the control goes here and this statement gets executed, that is I'm in function1. So that is how we can create a function by using the def keyword and call a function. Now the next one, how to pass parameters to a function. Parameters are arguments. Now let me create another function function2 and pass parameter as name. So name is the parameter here. Print I am in function2, and let's try to print the value. Print name is the variable name. Now let's call the function and pass the argument to it, function2, and pass the argument Bob. So here Bob is the argument. So we are passing the argument Bob. So this Bob gets assigned to the variable name, and name is printed as Bob here. So now save the file and run it. So now you can see I am in function2 and name is Bob. So that is how we can pass the parameters or arguments. So let's add this comment. Usually the value that we passed is called the argument, and that gets assigned to a variable is called the parameter. But parameters and arguments, they can be used interchangeably. Now let's add the comment to the print function so we can see the values. The next one is how to use keyword arguments. Now let's see how to pass multiple parameters by using comma separated. Here we passed just one parameter. Now let's pass multiple parameters. Let's create a function function3, and let's pass multiple parameters, that is name, age, height, smoking, status, and print. Since all these four variables are different data types, so to concatenate this, let's use the format function that we learned in the previous lectures. Name is age years old, and height is, and smoking status is, dot format of, and pass the variables to the format function in the same order. And let's try to call the function 3 of, for name let's pass Bob, age 40 and height 6'5", smoking status is false. Now let's try to run this. So now we can see Bob. Here the variable name, age, height and smoking status is replaced by Bob, 46.5 and false. So Bob is 40 years old, height is 6'5", smoking status is false. So that is how we can pass multiple variables. So let's try to give one more, and in this case let me try to remove Bob and now run it. So now you can see type error, function 3 missing one required positional argument, smoking status. So we get the error because it should call the function with correct number of arguments. So when you are calling a function, it should call with the correct number of arguments. That is, in this case it is 4 arguments, whereas we passed just 3 arguments. So just keep that in mind. Now the next one is how to use keyword arguments, that is sending arguments as key and value pair. So order of the arguments doesn't really matter because we are passing the arguments as key and value. So now let's create another function 4, and let's pass the arguments key as last name, first name and middle name. These are the keys, and let's try to print last name is plus last name. So we are concatenating the string last name with the variable last name. Now let's call the function 4, and first name equal to Bob, so that is the key value, and middle name equal to K, last name equal to some XYZ. So in this case we are passing the arguments that is as key and value, and this is called keyword arguments. So now let's save it and run the file. So now you can see last name is XYZ. So that is how we can pass the keyword arguments. Now let's see how to use arbitrary arguments. Let me create another function 5, and let's say we don't know how many number of arguments we are passing. So give star names, print first name is names of 0, and let's call the function 5, and let's pass Bob, M, and the last name XYZ. So in this case we are using the arbitrary arguments, and we added star before the parameter name since we don't know how many number of arguments will be passed. So if you don't know how many number of arguments will be passed, just use the star before the parameter name. So let's add that in the comment, add star before the parameter name if we don't know how many number of arguments will be passed. So now let's try to run this. So now you can see first name is Bob, so that is printed in the console. Now let's see arbitrary keyword arguments. So to create arbitrary keyword arguments, add star before the parameter when we don't know how many keyword arguments will be passed. So use double star. So let's create a function 6, and names, print middle name is names of middle name, And now let's call the function 6, and let's take first name as Bob and middle name equal to H, last name equal to some XYZ. So here we don't know how many number of keyword arguments will be passing, so in that case use double star. So now let's run it. Now we can see middle name is H. So here we are getting the value by passing the key. So we got the value H. So in the next function, let's see how to use default parameters. Let's create another function 7, and assign a default parameter value. State is Colorado. Print I live in state. Now let's call the function 5 and pass the value California, and let's call the function 4 more times and pass different values to it. Texas, and let's not pass any value. Now in this case let's pass Arizona, and one last, that is Idaho. Now let's run it. So you can see I live in California, Texas, and here it didn't take anything, Arizona and Idaho. So let's not pass any value and run it. So now we can see it's replaced with the default value Colorado. So that's how we can create default parameters. When we do not pass any argument to it, it takes the default parameter, otherwise it takes the value that we pass to the function. Now let's see how to pass different data types as function arguments. Let's take how to pass list. So let's create a function and name it function 8. You can name the function with any name and pass a list and print days in a week for temp in list. So we are looping through the list and print the values inside the list. Now let's pass a list to the function, so it has to be declared within the square brackets. Now here we are passing list as the argument for the function 8. So, and we are trying to loop through the list and trying to print the elements in the loop. Now let's run it. So now we can see Monday to Wednesday printed in the console. So that is how we can pass different arguments to the function. Now let's see how to return values using the return keyword. So let's create a function return function and pass parameter, that is value, and return value divided by 7. Let's try to call the function return function and pass the value 70. So if you run it, 70 divided by 7, so now you can see the value 10 printed in the console. Now let's see how to use the pass statement. Let's create a function empty definition function and use the pass statement. So if you don't have any implementation within the function, then use the pass statement. The next one is how to return boolean values inside a function. So let's create a function def bool function and pass the variable name to it, and if name equal to Bob, then return true, else return false. So now let's call the function bool function and pass the value to it, so that is name. So name will be assigned with Bob, and if name equal to Bob, it should return true, otherwise return false. Now let's run it. So in this case, let's try to print this so we can see in the console. So since we passed Bob, so we are seeing the value true. Let me pass another value. Let's take Chris, and you see false. So that's how we can return boolean values inside a function. So in the next lecture we'll learn lambda function. All right, see you in the next lecture.